everyone, it's Holly. I don't know why I just did that with my hair. I did it again. Anyways, it's Holly, and I'm here to talk about some of my most common rereads. So, I am a big fan of the reread. I don't reread nearly as much as I used to, just because now I have access to so many more books for a variety of reasons. You know, ebooks, audiobooks, multiple libraries. I make my own money, so I can buy books when I want them, instead of like basically only being able to go to the library whenever like my parents had time to take me to the library, and then only being able to use books from the library. So a lot of times I would just reread a lot of the same books over and over again. And I personally find a lot of rereading very comforting. And I think it's one of the reasons that like I'm not bothered by formulaic books. And I think it's interesting because, just casual observation, I think a lot of romance readers tend to also be rereaders. And I think that there's probably something there, that like a story that we know how it's going to end broadly is something that we like and enjoy. So rereading a story that we know how it's going to end, we also enjoy. And I know some people think like if you reread, like maybe you lose out on some parts of it. And there are some books I kind of wish I could reread for the first, or I could read for the first time again. But also I love rereading. I love revisiting characters I love picking up on things that I might have missed the first time. A lot of times I'll appreciate different characters in different ways upon a reread. Maybe I learned more about them, or I'm in a different spot in my life, so I look at that character differently. And so rereads all around are good. Now if you don't want to reread books, that's fine, don't reread them. Like, there are definitely books I will probably never reread for a variety of reasons, even if they were favorites. And pretty much every book that I would say is a common reread for me is a favorite. A favorite does not equal a reread. So let's go. So no surprise, a lot of these are romance novels because that's the majority of what I read. Also, I think romances tend to have a lot of joy and happiness, and typically that's what I'm looking for in a reread. Now sometimes I'll reread just like certain scenes. There's one book in particular that I do that with, which I think I've talked about before. I'm sure I'll talk about it here. Yes, it is on this list. But let's go. The first one is Blue-Eyed Devil by Lisa Kleypas. I think last year I did a reading vlog on this where I reread it for the first time in several years. I don't know how many times I've read this book. I love it. I actually ended up last year, after doing that vlog, buying a large print hardcover edition so that I could easily annotate it, and the next time I read it I want to do that. This book I feel like is probably one of the ones that makes the least sense to be a reread, and I've talked about it before, how it deals with a woman who's escaping an abusive relationship, and it's about her recovery and a new romance that she explores. And I love this story. I feel so attached to Haven, who's the female character here. She has a lot of experiences, and this was like before I feel like gaslighting was like even a term really, and like definitely before I knew what it was. But she's basically gaslit by people in her life, and like now, having gone through that with a boss, I see it in a different way. But I also just love seeing her grow and heal from the trauma she goes through, and seeing her become a stronger person because of it, and seeing her move through all of that pain and still get her happily ever after. I just love it. And the romance, it's so beautiful. Hardy is so supportive of her. It's wonderful. Next is another Lisa Kleypas, and that is Devil in Winter. I know this is probably one of her most popular books. I've talked about it countless times. I'm sure I am a Sebastian and Evie stan. This is the perfect reformed rake story, and I just love the relationship between Sebastian and Evie. I also love the friendships in this series, the Wallflower series, But the romance between Sebastian and Evie is just perfection, and he cares so much about her. It's beautiful. Next is another historical romance, and that is To Pleasure a Prince by Sabrina Jeffries. This is the one that has like a scene in particular that I read a lot. There's just a scene in here after the characters get married that is so beautiful, and just every time I read it, it warms my heart so much. Like, I can't explain to you. It's such a small thing, I feel like. I mean, it is a big, like, it's one of the characters makes like a grand gesture, and then one of the characters reacts and like a reveal happens and stuff. But at the same time, it's such a minor thing, I feel like. I don't know. I just love it. It's a beautiful scene. Next, another historical romance is When the Duke Returns by Eloisa James. I don't know why I'm always drawn back to this. Like, if you ask me what is your favorite Eloisa James book, I would never say When the Duke Returns, but it's the one I've read the most. And I think it was my first experience with a virgin hero character, and maybe that's why it's just like, I love that she did that. She does some things with them having sex. She does that a lot, where like not every sex scene is like some amazing like miraculous thing, and I really like that because I feel like it's more real, especially like in this case you have two virginal characters, and I don't know, this just has some really cute funny scenes. The characters are great. I just really enjoy it. Next is, now this I've really only read twice, but I can easily see it becoming a regular reread, and that is The Other series by Anne Bishop. So written and read for sure, I feel like I could just read a million times, and I reread these last year on audio. Highly recommend the audiobooks. I want to buy them and just like re-listen to them. I think it's a really good series, and I think it's a series that definitely, it's very complex. Like, the world building is fairly detailed and complex, and so you can definitely get more every time. But I also just love the world. Like, I just love being there. Like, I don't even need a ton of content. I just need to like be there. And I love Meg, and like I said, the audiobooks are spectacular. The narrator who does these, she is a true genius. Like, what she does with these characters and like how she makes them feel so fleshed out with her voices is amazing. I love it. It's definitely a harder read. It deals with self-harm, and there's a lot of violence, there's a lot of loss, death, all of those things, but totally worth it for me. Next is The Secret Garden by Frances Hodgson Burnett. I have read this. This is another one I've read so many times. This will always be a big read for me. I've always had it in my head that if I ever have kids, this will be the first book I ever read to them. Like, I will take it to the hospital and like read it to them like right after they're born, because it is just, I always say it's my favorite book because I feel like it's non-offensive to have like a dead author be your favorite, but it really is a book that I love. It always gets to me. Like, the scary bits always spook me out, and the like sweet bits always make me happy, and the only thing I would want is like a Dick and Mary relationship, but I understand that that's not going to happen. But like, in my head it totally happens after the book, and it's fine. 100% Dick and Mary end up as a couple, but it's fine. She's like 10, so, but like, we all agree, right, that that's there. I just love it. I think it's great. I think it's a great example of children's literature, and that like you don't have to like dumb down books for children, and I don't know, always makes me happy. Love the movie too, the like 1993 version, I think. Next is The Addicted series by Krista and Becca Ritchie. I do like a lot of their books. I think honorable mention probably to like The Raging Ones. I actually just did another reread of that by audio, and I'm gonna reread The Last Hope soon too. But the Addicted series in particular is my favorite. Well, I don't know. The Raging one's good too, but the Addicted series I've read a lot. It's Lily and Lo's story. It's super codependent and angsty, and I can see why a lot of people wouldn't like it, but for me it 100% works. They're my favorite couple, and I always love reading their story. Next is Persuasion, which is my favorite Austen, of course. I think I've read this 4 or 5 times now. I don't know. It's just always a good read. It's my favorite like romance trope. It's like the perfect length, the perfect character development. Wentworth's letter is beautiful. I love it. Next is Confessions of a Shopaholic. So loosely I would say the series, but definitely Confessions of a Shopaholic, the first book, is probably, it's definitely the one I've read the most and I would be drawn to the most. At this point I feel pretty comfortable with the series, like just going in wherever I wanted. And Shopaholic and Baby is probably the second one I would reread the most. There's just some like really quality Luke Becky moments in there that make me so happy. Like the birth part, like when they're in the hospital. Luke, you are a true gem. Next is Crash Into You, which is a YA contemporary by Katie McGarry. I haven't read this in a couple of years. Kind of scared to, because like YA contemporary and I are not in a good place, but I feel like this would still hit. This is the 3rd book in the Pushing the Limit series, which I think is a very good series. Recommend it for sure. But Crash Into You is my favorite. The female character, Rachel, I think that's her name, is she has like a lot of anxiety and stuff, and like I just felt very connected to her. I love the romance. It's like socioeconomic differences. I'm a big fan of that. Rachel is like really cares about cars. I love a character who's like competent about something. Her romance with Isaiah, oh, he's such a sweetheart. I love them. I just love this story, and every time I have read it, I've been, even like on my rereads, I've been like, okay, I'm gonna read it slowly. I just immediately get hooked and cannot put it down. It's so beautifully written. I mean, the cover is atrocious, but the story is beautiful. Next is Lover Awakened. It's been a long time since I read this, but it is in the Black Dagger Brotherhood series, which I'm not really reading anymore. Maybe I would continue. I don't know. But this is Zadist's story. And I love Zadist. Like, I feel like if you know anything about me, like I feel like a lot of these books have similar character types and similar romance structures. And this is a perfect example of that. I love Zadist. I love Bella. I think that's her name. I feel like her name is Bella because I always think of like Bella from Twilight, and then I'm like, that's weird. But yes, I love him. There's like a novella-y story called Father Mine that I have in a like companion thing that I think is very beautiful too. He is a survivor of basically sexual slavery, and he's like very gruff and has been through a lot, but he really cares about like his brother and about Bella and about, you know, his family, and I'm just a big fan of that. And then the last one is Everything Between Us by Milo Ferreira, which I actually just bought a physical copy of, and I really want to reread it. This is another one where a character has extreme anxiety, and it feels very much so like anxiety, like my experience with anxiety, so it's something I connect to very easily. Like this book in a lot of ways helped me realize that I'm not broken, like I just am how I am. Doesn't mean I don't need help, but like that I'm not a broken person. The romance is a little weird because the hero is kind of a prostitute, and I believe he does sleep with her mom, so it's a little weird, but I'm okay with it. And like they get stuck in a snowstorm, which isn't always my favorite, but I think it works really well here. Talking about this just makes me want to reread this, but I have so many books I need to read. Like my TBR shelf is right over there, and it's like, bitch, what are you talking about? You need to read us. And I'm like, I know, but I have but I do really love that story, and I feel like not enough people read it. So like I said, these are all favorites, but not all my favorites are rereads. Like some books I don't think I'll ever reread are A Prisoner of Night and Fog by Anne Blankman, which I do want to get physical copies of that series, but it's just such a hard read. Similarly, the Breathing series by Rebecca Donovan, stuff like that, I just don't know if I could reread. But these ones are comfort reads for whatever reasons. They make me happy, they restore my faith in humanity, and they make me feel seen, and that's usually what I'm looking for in a reread. But yeah, those are some of my most commonly reread books. Let me know if you do rereads, or are you just like a one and done kind of a person. I think there are two types of readers. Neither of us are wrong. But thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye!